Hi everyone, Rachael here, and welcome to another episode of the Ditch the Diet podcast. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Ditch the Diet podcast. If you are a regular listener to the podcast, thank you very much for coming back for another episode. If you're a brand new listener, then a very warm welcome. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of the future episodes. And please be sure to check back at previous episodes, of which we have lots available to listen to. So thank you for being here. If you are new, the Ditch the Diet podcast is a podcast for those of you out there who wish to learn how to quit yo-yo dieting and find an alternative, happier way to live while still losing weight and gaining a healthier body. So you're in the right place if that's what you're looking for. We speak to all sorts of professionals in all different areas about all different aspects of healthy lifestyle. So make sure you tune in, you subscribe, and you go back and scroll through our old episodes to see if there are any that you've missed that would be useful for you to listen to. So today's episode is a little bit different in that we are going back to our Inspiring Stories series. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, we had an Inspiring Stories series last year, and I wanted to release another one of these episodes today. If you haven't listened to any of these episodes before, I'll link to some of them in the show notes for you so that you can go back and listen. Today I'm talking to Gemma. Gemma is a psychologist, but she is also a person who has had quite a significant struggle with her own mental health. And Gemma is going to tell us her story about how she manages her mental health, but not just manages, but also has developed and used lots of different strategies that have helped her to overcome her struggle as well. And she has a really inspiring story to tell, so I don't want to give too much of it away. Mental health, sort of anxiety and depression, is something that I have suffered lifelong as well. So a lot of what Gemma says I can resonate with too, and I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of our listeners as well. So have a listen, and hopefully by the end of this episode you will feel inspired to make some changes in your own life too. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to our discussion today, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure you have lots of wisdom to share on the topic of mental health and talking about your own story. So before we get started, before we get into the story, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how would you describe yourself? What do you do?
Okay, so first of all, I'm 28, so I'm clinging on to my 20s for dear life.
Look at you.
And I'm from Sheffield, but I now live in Rotherham. So I mean, how would I describe myself? Jesus, I do so much. So my main job is that I'm a junior psychologist. So that's my full-time role. I've been doing that for about a year now. I'm also a qualified personal trainer. So I teach yoga classes and things at a friend of mine. She's got a gym, so I teach yoga classes and things there. I'm also a suicide prevention crisis counsellor, which is voluntary. And I do that through a company called Shout, who they launched officially this year in May. They launched with, it was Prince William actually who launched it. But they work with a number of different kind of mental health charities, such as Young Minds, Calm, Rethink, all of the kind of really big mental health charities. I do blogging. I have a Facebook group called The Safe Space, which I think you're a member of.
I am, yeah.
So I've got my fingers in a lot of pies, shall we say.
Many strings to your bow.
Yeah, but I love it. It's great. It keeps me out of trouble. So, yeah.
What do you, how did you get interested in psychology, and like what made you choose that as a career path?
You know, it's really weird. I'm not actually sure, because when I was at school, I was all about sort of performance side of things. So I actually went to college for music. So I did a diploma in music performance, and it was at college. I was never going to uni. I never wanted to go to uni. I was never interested, and then nobody else in my family had ever been to uni either, so it wasn't something that was like expected of me or anything. So it was only when the rest of my kind of friends that were at college started talking about uni and saying that they were going and kind of looking at courses and things, that I thought, oh, maybe I'll have a look and just sort of see. And I'd actually realised through doing my music course that music wasn't something I wanted to pursue as a career. It was something I enjoyed. It was something that I loved doing, but it was more of a hobby for me. So I kind of just looked, and I'd always kind of been interested in human behaviour and why people do things and why people behave a certain way. And so I kind of had a look, and I put there was this website, I don't even know if it exists anymore, but there was this website where basically you could like type in what your interests were, and it'd like tell you what sort of jobs you were suited for and things like that. And it came up with like a psychologist. I'd always been, somebody that was there for friends. I was someone that people went to for advice and things like that. So I suppose that kind of thing came quite naturally to me. So I looked at psychology courses and ended up doing a undergraduate degree in Huddersfield, and then I did a 2-year master's degree, which I finished in June this year, and that was in clinical psychology. So that was kind of a little bit more in depth, more towards the kind of mental health side of things. But yeah, it was a really kind of split, random, spontaneous decision, really, I guess, but one that I'm very, very glad happened. So
what does your day-to-day work involve at the moment? What is your do you have a main focus?
So my role is really, really varied, to be honest. So I do a lot of work-based assessments on people who need help getting reasonable adjustments for different conditions that they might have. I also do disability awareness training to companies, and that can be about a number of different issues, not necessarily always mental health. Sometimes it might be a hearing problem, it might be a vision problem, it could be something like fibromyalgia or dyslexia. So I deliver that. I also do disability impact training. So this is for people who are recently diagnosed with different disabilities or issues that they're kind of struggling to come to terms with. So we kind of go in there and we talk through things with them and kind of go through different coping methods. And I also do coping strategies with people if they want to go a little bit more in depth. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of elements to my role, which means that it's obviously really, really varied. I don't ever have the same day twice, and I come across a multitude of different people with all kinds of different conditions. So I have to kind of use my brain quite a bit, which is great. So that's mainly what I do.
And so you set up, so you do the crisis counselling as a voluntary thing, and you obviously have set up the Facebook group for people that struggle with mental health. There must be a reason for you doing both of those. So tell me a bit about what sort of made you want to do that. So
I think most of the time with psychology, there's either an interest there because of a family member or because of a personal experience that you've had with, some sort of psychological illness or problem. And so for me, both my parents have depression. So I've kind of grown up around it anyway, but I myself have severe generalized anxiety disorder. I've had that, for as long as I can remember. But I suppose when you're younger, you don't realize that that's not what everybody else is feeling like. You kind of feel like that's probably a normal thing to feel. But I suppose to a certain extent it is, because we all experience some levels of anxiety during day-to-day life. It's something that we do need to experience. It stops us from doing stupid things, like walking out in front of a bus and things like that. So, but also I've had I had a really, really sort of dark period of my life, which ended probably around this time last year. Actually, this time of year is quite an interesting one for me now. So I was working in another job up to, it was actually my 1 year anniversary yesterday of this job that I do now. So before then I worked in another job. I won't go too far into what that role was or anything like that, because I am still friends with some of the people there, and I kind of don't want to stir up all tensions and things. But the basic gist of it was that I wasn't treated very well, and I was kind of made to feel like the scapegoat for a lot of things. I wasn't happy there, and they made me they blamed me for a lot of stuff that it wasn't my fault. I was blamed for something that happened when I wasn't even there. All kinds of just things that made me not want to go to work, and I ended up having a lot of a breakdown, which meant that I had to take quite a lot of time off work. I ended up handing my notice in before I even had another job to go to, because I was just so unhappy, and I had a long, lengthy discussion with my mom, with a couple of friends, and they sort of said, nothing is worth you feeling this way, which is completely true. No job is worth your mental health. So for me, I think it was important for me to then be able to use the experiences and the things that I've been through personally to help other people. I don't want anything to be in vain. I want to have learned from it and then be able to use that to help other people that might be going through this through the same thing or something similar, which is why I set up the safe space, and it's why I do the suicide prevention. I also did lose a former colleague to suicide last year as well, which is another kind of massive reason why. I just feel like if he'd had somewhere that he could talk and have gone to, or felt that he could go to, maybe he wouldn't have done what he did. And it's, it was just such a sad time for everybody that kind of knew him. And it's the old cliche of, you never would have expected him to do it, which, you hear everybody say when somebody takes their own life. But yeah, it was very true of him, from the outside looking in. He had a lot going for him. But obviously, we can never be too sure what's going on inside somebody else's head. But I just wanted to, I wanted to set the safe space up just for people to go, for them to, get things off their chest in a safe environment, somewhere where they won't feel judged, somewhere where there's always going to be somebody to talk to. Even if, I'm not online, we're at over 100 members now, so there's always going to be somebody there that may have been through the same thing, or can at least just offer, some an ear or some reassuring words, which is I think important for a lot of people to have.
Absolutely. It can, as someone who also suffers from anxiety and depression, I even, and I would say I'm quite good at asking for help now.
Yeah, so am I.
But But I also always still hesitate before I do. Like, there's always that. Always hesitate still, even though I know that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And as in before, I used to think, oh no, like there are people that are a lot worse off than I am. You know, I should be able to cope. I've got all the skills that I should be able to use, and I still find it quite hard. So like, I can't even imagine what it would be like to, you know, to be experiencing something like anxiety and depression, even just for the first time, and you know, feeling like you can't, feeling like people will think you're stupid or.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's so much stigma as well, which stops a lot of people from speaking out. Even now, there's still stigma around it, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't know how you feel about the field that you work in, but the field that I work in, you know, I'm in the coaching realm, and sometimes I still think, oh, I should be setting an example. I should be the one that's, you know, I should have my shit together. And I can tell you right now, and I'm quite happy to say it out loud on the podcast to the many hundreds of people that listen, is that I do not have my shit together all the time.
Yeah, me neither. I think for me as well, obviously being a psychologist, I feel I was before, you know, now I'm very, very open about it, and I will happily tell somebody if I'm struggling, if I'm not doing well. But before I was like, you're a psychologist, you should be able to fix yourself, which now that I think back is a ridiculous thing to say, because, you know, you can't, even doctors need doctors, you know, even nurses, you know, we can't treat ourselves. We have to kind of always ask for help, which I think a lot of people like you said, still struggle because of, I think a lot of it is to do with the stigma, but also maybe because of, like you say, being seen as stupid, or being seen as, there's that old kind of saying of, you know, pull yourself together, or another one which I hate, which is man up.
I hear that a lot.
Which I think should just be banned completely from vocabulary. But I think a lot of people are probably worried because mental illness is mental. You can't see it. So, you know, you go to the doctor with a broken arm and you can see that the arm is broken. You put it in a cast, it gets better. But you can't do that with your mind. Your mind is something that nobody can see. Nobody can prove or disprove what is or isn't going on inside your head. And I think it's very difficult for a lot of people to understand why people can't control their own thoughts. And, you know, believe me, if we could, I'm sure we all would. But it doesn't work like that. And I think that's another reason why I set up the safe space, why I'm so passionate about mental health, is because I want to be at least a part of reducing that stigma around it, and making sure that people can go and get the help, and that it doesn't end up where they are feeling like they're better off dead. Because, you know, so many people that text in when I'm doing my suicide prevention work, you know, a lot of them are like, you know, people would be better off without me, and which is obviously not true, but in their head, you know, they feel like they're doing people a favor almost, which, you know, to get to that stage, it must just be horrific. And I can't even imagine. I mean, you know, I'm quite open about the fact that I've had very, very dark thoughts, very, very, you know, thoughts of hurting myself. But I would never have gone through with it. But to even be considering doing something like that, it's the place you must be in is just you're in your lowest kind of moment, and to be there for somebody at that time is really, really important to me, and it gives me a sense of purpose as well, which I think is great for my mental health, which I hope doesn't sound selfish, because that's not the reason, but yeah.
I know. I think when you can use your own personal experience to support other people, then you absolutely have to. Yeah. Really, in some way or another. But yeah, so what is different? You know, what is different for you if you were to look back to this time last year, or even this time 18 months ago or so? What has changed for you since then with your own mental health? What's
so much, so much. I mean, if you'd have told me, 12 months ago, that I would be kind of sitting here now, I would have said 2 words, and the second one would have been off. I was, I'm off my antidepressants now, which I came off last month, which I never thought would happen. I was having CBT this time last year, which was incredible. I got a lot of benefit from it. But in terms of how things are different, I have a lot more confidence. I'm a lot happier. I feel much more, just much more content in what I have and what I'm doing with my life. I feel like I've got a purpose. I feel like I've got a direction. I've got goals, which I didn't have this time last year. I have a great support network, which has kind of always been there, but I think I'm now realizing what a great support network I've got. I didn't notice it as much, this time, like you say, 18 months ago. So yeah, I think that the changes have been obviously all very, very positive. I still have very anxious days, which, I don't think will ever go away, because anxiety is not something that I think you ever get rid of. I think you can control it. I think you can reduce it, but I don't think you can get rid of it. But as I now feel that I have more control over my thoughts and the way that I react to them, which is obviously a massive part of dealing with them anyway. Yeah, so I'm just much happier in myself, definitely.
Yeah, and you mentioned CBT there. That was one of the tools that you used. Was there anything else in particular that you found? Like, how did you end up actually accessing CBT? Or because I know when I was feeling at my lowest, even trying to find out what was available out there seemed to be impossible for me, because I sometimes even found it difficult to even pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
how did you?
I have anxiety.
Yeah.
So what I did was, I initially went to my GP, and sort of described what was happening to me. I knew what it was, obviously, from my studies and everything. I knew that it was anxiety. But it was only when I did my studies that I realised what it was. I was sitting there in a lecture, and we were talking about anxiety disorder, and they were putting up all these kind of symptoms and things that people experience. And I'm doing a mental checklist in my head and going, that sounds like me, that sounds like me, that sounds like me. But it still took me another good couple of years before I actually went and sought help. And I described everything to the doctor, and the doctor gave me some antidepressants, which I will be honest, I didn't personally want to take. I know they're fantastic for a lot of people, and a lot of people swear by them, which is great. If whatever works for people is fantastic. But for me personally, I didn't really want to go on them because I didn't have depression, I had anxiety. But they then said to me, we're going to refer you for CBT. So I was put on this waiting list, but I went through a service called IAPT, which is improving access to psychological therapies. And there's like a step process or a stage process. So the first thing that you do is you go to a stress management or a stress control course, and it's six evenings over 6. So it's 1 evening a week over 6 weeks. You go to it was in Sheffield City Centre, the one that I went to, and you sort of sit there, and it's run by a psychotherapist and a counsellor, I believe, who kind of go through. You get a workbook, and they go through kind of stress management techniques, and all sorts of kind of different ways of helping yourself. And then once you've done that, if that hasn't worked, you move up to the next step, which is a psychological wellbeing practitioner. So I had 6 sessions with a psychological wellbeing practitioner who was lovely. She was great. And then she then referred me on for the CBT. So it was a long process, and the waiting list is ridiculous. But for me, it was beneficial. I know that obviously it doesn't work for everybody, but yeah, for me, it definitely was. I think it probably obviously helps when you have a good therapist and a good connection with that therapist. Mine was fantastic. I can't praise her enough. But I also did a lot of mindfulness things, a lot of meditation, and yoga, and also exercise. Exercise is just a massive thing for me. I've just been exercising before you called, so it's such a great way of kind of relieving stress for me. It's something that it's non-negotiable. It's something that I always kind of try and make time for in my day. So they were kind of mainly the sort of tools that I used alongside the CBT. And now that I'm no longer having the CBT, obviously I have the tools that I gained during those sessions. So things like thought challenging, and there's a, I can't remember the name of it. It's gone out of my head. That's really bad as a psychologist, isn't it? Basically, you kind of argue with your own negative thoughts, if that makes sense. So you have a positive answer for a negative statement, basically. And so I've got those tools, and I still keep up with the exercise, the yoga, and also campaigning for mental health is something that helps me personally recover, because seeing how many other people are going through the same thing and who understand, it's sort of a comfort that you're not alone. So that's something that I find quite helpful as well.
Yeah, and you've done quite a bit of raising awareness for mental health. Let's talk about your charity event. I'll let you tell the listeners exactly what you did.
So it was January 2018. I flew out to Africa, to Tanzania, and I did Mt Kilimanjaro for Mind, who again were fantastic with me. So I used their service quite a lot, their helpline, and the website has got loads of resources and things on there, which I made a lot of use out of. So I raised £2,500 for Mind, and I did Kilimanjaro. So it took 5 days to get up, and then 2 days to get back down again. So yeah, that was probably one of my proudest achievements, if not my proudest achievement to date. Just because of the sheer challenge of it. It was insane, like what you can actually do if you kind of put your mind to it, is unreal. Like I'm not somebody that cries. I've never really been a crier, but when I got to the top of that mountain, I cried like all the tears that I'd probably been like storing away for the past God knows how long. Just because, well, one, because I was exhausted, and two, because I just couldn't actually believe that I'd physically managed to get up there, and also because of the reason why I'd gone up there in the first place, because it kind of meant so much to me to do it for Mind. There wasn't really anybody else I was ever going to kind of do it for. Yeah.
I mean, I can't even, like, as someone that's also suffers from anxiety disorder, like, I can't even fathom that in my head. Like,
me neither. Me neither.
So, like, even you describing it there is actually like giving me goosebumps thinking about it. Like,
it was just such an incredible kind of feeling to kind of get to the top. So, you know, I'd spent months training. Well, I say training. Obviously, you can't really prepare for something of that magnitude, but I did, you know, a lot of kind of cardio, weighted carrying, a lot of strength work, and also yoga as well, you know, for flexibility, to make sure that my joints were, you know, going to be able to move and to get up. Obviously the terrain wasn't always smooth, but you know, nothing can really prepare you for standing at the foot of that mountain where you can't even see the top of it when you're looking up. You can't even see halfway up. I think, you know, I sort of stood at the top and stood at the bottom, looking, and I was thinking, how am I going to do this? Like, but then for me, like in my head, not doing it wasn't an option. Like, not getting to the top. The only way that I wasn't getting to the top was if I like died. That was the only way that I wasn't going up there. And every single day was horrible, but in a way that made it more of an achievement when you'd done it. So there was one particular day that was especially challenging, because when you say you climb Mt Kilimanjaro, what you're actually doing is walking up it, but there is a bit that it does involve some actual climbing, and that was on I think it was the third day, and it's called the Barranco Wall, and it's a sheer rock face that you do have to climb up, and I am not very strong in my upper body. I have a bit of a shoulder problem, which I've had for a few years now, which means that, you know, things such as pull-ups and things like that are not really my strength. All my strength is mainly kind of in my legs. So I was really, really worried that I wasn't going to get up there, particularly with having a backpack on and everything as well. But everybody was really, really great. We all kind of supported each other, and we all managed to climb up it. There was a woman who was doing it who was 70. She was incredible. Like I can't even. She pushed us on, because we were all like, I mean, if she can do it, then so can we. She was unbelievable. And we had a doctor on the team. We were very well looked after for the whole kind of trek, for the whole challenge, and everybody that was kind of on it was doing it for their own personal reasons. A couple of others were doing it for charity, but not everybody. But I'd got a t-shirt, a Mind t-shirt, which they sent me to wear the very, very top of Mount Kilimanjaro, and that picture is on my Facebook somewhere. It's probably on my Instagram as well, and you can see I am absolutely exhausted. I'm crying. I'm just an absolute mess, because we just kind of the hardest slog, I think, was to the summit. So we did it in stages. We kind of went up and then down a bit, up and then down a bit, to kind of acclimatise to the altitude. But on the last day, on the summit day, it was straight right up to the top. There was no going down. It was all up. And what we did was we set off at, I think it was like 10 p.m, 11 p.m, something like that, with an aim of getting to the summit for 6 a.m, which was the time when the sun was going to be rising. So we did it in darkness up to the final summit on the fifth day. We had our head torches on, and there were a few people who started to get affected by the altitude. And I had a little bit of not the sickness. I was never sick. My head was a little bit kind of, the only way I can describe it, and this is not something that I've experienced for a long time, is when you're drunk, and your head sort of starts to spin and starts to, you kind of, you're just not fully kind of with it. And I don't remember doing this, but the porter that was with me at the time, he said to me that I kept jumping out of the way, like as if I was trying to dodge things. And he said he asked me what I was doing. And apparently the headlights that we'd all got headlamps on, head torches. And he said, apparently I said to him, I'm jumping out of the way of the cars. And I thought the headlamps people were wearing were car headlights. And yeah, so but I have no kind of recollection of that, which is a little bit scary, but it as soon as I got to the top, I just snapped straight out of it, and I remember everything. I remember watching the sunrise from the top, and just that sort of sense of accomplishment, and thinking I've actually done it. And then the worst bit for me as well was when they said to us, right, we've got to get back down, and we were all like, oh God, yeah, we've got to get back down. But it was like that, from that elation to, oh, we've got to do more walking. I mean, I don't know what we thought. I don't know if we thought there was like a cable car or a slide back down, but yeah. Yeah, exactly. We were only thinking, get to the top. We weren't even thinking about getting back down again. But yeah, it was just the most incredible experience. I would recommend it to anybody who is kind of thinking about doing it. Definitely do. It's a once in a lifetime thing. Like I don't think I'd do it again, because I think the magic wouldn't feel the same. But for the fact that it was a spur of the moment decision, a lot of my decisions do seem to be spur of the moment, but yeah, to say that it was something that I never kind of thought I would be able to do, to say that I've done it, it still kind of fills me with it. It still kind of gives me a bit of a kind of lump in my throat, makes me kind of feel really kind of proud, and it is definitely something that I'm proud to say that I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. Considering, considering how you were feeling, like it's just such a massive turnaround, and it's nice to hear and to share positive stories like this, because a lot of the time, I'm thinking back to when I was, feeling at my worst. The thought of even, I don't know, like making a snack felt like climbing a mountain, or washing my hair, or getting out of bed. So to hear that you have a mental health condition and struggle with anxiety and have achieved things like that is just pretty amazing. So thank you for sharing your story with us. I think it might be useful to give the listeners, a few sort of pointers if they want to maybe find out more about your Facebook group, or the counselling service that you have, or where's the best place for people to go if they are listening to this and maybe have been thinking that it's time that they did ask for help. Do you have suggestions for that?
Yeah, I mean, for a start, Mind are always a kind of great place to start. They have a lot of resources on their website, a lot of downloadable PDF documents and things on there. And I do believe one of them is regarding kind of talking to your GP if that's something that you're a little bit scared of doing. I know a lot of people are worried about going to their GP with mental health, because unfortunately there are some GPs that don't take it as seriously as they should. I'm very, very lucky that mine did. So I definitely would go to Mind. There's also if you're a male, there's Campaign Against Living Miserably, or CALM. They are amazing. They do a lot of work, particularly with men. Obviously, as we know, men are much less likely to speak out or to seek help with mental health problems, and suicide is the biggest killer of men under the age of 45. So CALM was set up with the aim of giving men somewhere in particular to go to. to speak to other men who are maybe going through similar things. There's also Young Minds for people. I believe it's under the age of 25. So I'm way past that now, but for anybody who is 25 or under, Young Minds are a great place to go. And they are affiliated with Shout, who are the company that I volunteer for with the suicide prevention work. And they are on 85258 if you ever do want to text in. Just text the word Shout to 85258 and they will get a crisis counsellor straight to you to kind of talk through what you might be experiencing. I would just definitely recommend as well I'm biased, but my Facebook group is The Safe Space. The profile picture is like a lotus flower, and it says The Safe Space underneath it. It's like a navy blue background. If you request to join, there are some questions to answer, but don't feel like you have to answer them. If you just want to put that you've heard me on the podcast, that's absolutely fine. And I will let you in. There's loads of people on there. I've got a lot of kind of things planned for what I want to do on there in the coming months. So there's a live meditation video up at the minute for people who might want to kind of try meditation if it's something you've never done before. I also recommend looking on YouTube. One of the things that I did when I was struggling was found some meditation, mindfulness, all kinds of different videos on YouTube, which is obviously free and very easily accessible as long as you've got an internet connection. And that kind of got me into meditation as well. There's so many places now that you can go that will kind of help you, that are kind of taking more notice of mental health problems, which I think is such a positive step. There's still a long way to go, but I think the steps that have been taken so far are very, very positive. And in terms of, if people may be kind of struggling with, if they've been out of work for a while and they want to get back to work after a mental health problem, I would definitely just say, find something that you love. Don't ever settle for something less than what you really, really love doing. Because if you love doing something, it's not work, or it doesn't feel like work. So, even if that's setting up your own business. I've got a friend who has her own soft furnishings business, and she initially was kind of doing that on the side. She now makes a little bit of money from it, and she absolutely loves it. It's her happy place. So yeah, definitely find something that you love doing, and don't ever kind of settle for something that you don't enjoy. Particularly if you're going back to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your story. It's been lovely to talk to you. I'll put all of the links that you've mentioned into the show notes so that people can find them. So if you're listening to this episode, it would just be a case of scrolling down on whichever device you're listening to and then just click the link. So thank you very much again for your time. So once again, I would love to say a big thank you to Gemma for joining me for this episode of the podcast. If you'd like to know more about anything that Gemma spoke about, any of the numbers to call, websites to go to, they're all in the show notes. So don't forget to scroll down on whichever device that you're listening on and check out those links if you need them. And if you'd like to find out more about what we do here at Ditch the Diet, then please feel free to go onto the website, ditchthedietacademy.com, download some of the freebies from the homepage of the website. The Ditch the Diet Academy is now closed until January, so unfortunately you have missed out on becoming a member this year. But we will be reopening in January, so keep an eye out and I'll let you know as soon as we are. Again, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next Thursday for a new episode of the Ditch the Diet podcast.